Perfect.
Like if you want a piece of paper and then those post-it notes that are already on your desk, and a pen, pencil, a writing utensil of your choice.
So that's what we do on our
Yeah. Yeah, everything else.
Now, was your student or teacher motivation?
Student. Is this plugged in today?
You just have to turn it on. There's a little button on the right hand, or left, whatever the little slide button is.
Okay.
Okay?
And then use the arrow keys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The Mac didn't take over the transitions from my Dell, so if something's off, that's why. All right, good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? Wonderful. Good. All right, today we're going to talk about motivation. So what I want to start with is on your post-it notes right there, I want you to think about 3 things that motivate you to teach in a high-needs school. You have about 3 minutes to do that. Take about another 1.5 minutes to wrap up if you need it. Remember, like all 3 if possible. All right, everybody finished? Kevin, you finished? Okay, take a couple more seconds to write down your last one. All right, Josh, what were 2 of your reasons?
One reason was change the status of the school. Another reason was make a difference in the students' life.
Okay, Taylor, what about you? What'd you put down?
One of them is sort of like Josh's, is to make a profound difference in people's lives, more so than you would in another school district.
Okay, how do you mean? Like, as
Well,
opposed to a regular school district?
I'd say the school that I went to was not high needs, and therefore the chance to run into those students who really need positive change in our lives is much less likely to happen.
Okay, Kevin?
One is to educate students, and another is to make a positive difference in their lives, help them to succeed in the future.
Matthew, what'd you put?
I mean, more cynicism, so I'll say that I feel like it's going to be a learning experience for me and become a more capable person because of it, and I'm getting paid.
Okay, so the pay, very nice. Katie, what'd you have?
Well, I had those reasons and the free education too.
Okay. Brandon?
I put helping students learn and giving students motivation to achieve great things.
Okay. John?
The first one I put down was I just love people.
Okay. What about another one?
Want to change the world,
Okay.
make life better for as many people as possible.
Very nice. All right. I put, the reason I like to, that motivates me to teach in high need schools is I get a whole summer break. Short school hours as opposed to like, say, a longer office job. And you get free entry to school sporting events. So what I want you guys to do is work together, come here in the middle, and I want you all to put the things that motivate you all. I've drawn a line down the middle. Put the similar things on either side. So classify those in some way, how you think they're similar.
So it's just, it can do intrinsic, extrinsic.
And then if you all want to put mine on it too.
Okay.
You all can talk it out.
This has to do with.
You want to do students versus teachers?
Yeah, that's what it's.
Yeah, maybe like free and.
What?
So this is students.
Okay, this is teaching, this is student.
Direct satisfaction from all these things.
Upstairs.
Upstairs.
All right,
She,
don't forget
if
about
she's
the
here,
board.
she's up in her office.
Summer break.
Katie, where do you think that one go?
Short school hours.
Okay, you all finished? All right, let's see what we got. Okay, so you all put, help the community, make a profound difference in people's lives, educate the students, love the people, change the status of the school, everything like that on one side. And then you have free education, money, job security, pay, summer break, the learning experience. So what made you all classify these the way you did? Katie, what's similar for the items on the right side, your left?
Those are things we're doing for students.
Okay. John, what were the things on the right side have in common?
Those were the intrinsic motivators, the ones that dealt with the teachers.
Okay, so what do you mean by intrinsic?
Personal, internal motivations or driving forces for what we do.
Okay, so what, give me an example.
Well, like the paycheck, you work a job that you may not necessarily like, but, you know, you work there because you get the paycheck at the end of the month or end of the week.
Okay, so would that be intrinsic?
Well, that's extrinsic.
Okay, so then what would extrinsic be, Josh?
That was extrinsic, I'm sorry. You want intrinsic?
Right, you gave us the definition of intrinsic. So what would the definition, a rough definition of extrinsic be if the pay is an example of extrinsic motivation?
So it'd be like something that drives you to do something. So it's something that normally you might not think about doing normally. Something you might not normally be motivated to do. But because something externally pushes you to move forward. Such as a paycheck.
Okay, very good. So Josh points out that extrinsic motivators like pay or short hours or summer break is something that is external to us. It's an extra reward, okay? It's something that's outside of us. So here are the definitions for intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. John, intrinsic, like you said, is the motivation to be involved in an activity for its own sake. So Katie, what type of motivators to teach in high need schools would be intrinsic motivators?
Doing it for the students to make yourself feel good.
Okay. Matthew, what do you think? Another
Particular
example.
interest in your subject that you're teaching.
Okay, very good. So besides pay, Brandon, what's another extrinsic motivator?
The summer breaks.
Okay.
vacation.
Very good. So like Josh said, extrinsic motivation is the motivation to engage in activity as a means to an end, or we have some external force that is outside of us that gives us the motivation, like pay or long summer breaks. Okay? So now what I want you all to do is split down the middle at Josh and Brandon. This team is going to have extrinsic motivators. I want you to write down 4 to 5 pros of extrinsic motivators in the classroom in high-need schools. You all are going to have intrinsic motivators. 4 and 5 pros to intrinsic motivators within the classroom. So try to think about what you wrote down and possibly something you could do in the classroom and how that would affect your students in high-need schools. And I'll give you all about 4 minutes. So just write the pros for now.
Are we intrinsic or extrinsic?
You are intrinsic and you are extrinsic.
It can be effective, that's much comfort. Gives you, pushes you forward. Sometimes we're talking about the students, we're just talking about in general. These aren't just using it for teaching, this is.
Within the classroom, if you can try to get at least 3 of those.
More rewarding.
What's going on as a teacher. Yeah.
As a teacher, from your all's perspective.
Well.
How can that help?
It's very good motivator. The pro would be, makes me, I guess maybe the. Students in the classroom, right? So you don't have to accomplish the students.
Motivate the students or something that motivates you that affects the students directly.
Yeah, so the pro that's
Okay.
in the classroom would be.
So you can think about it and how you do it. Both the students and the teacher perspective. Okay?
So that once they get into the subject material, they'll be intrinsic motivation. Yeah. A pro, but a pro without the reward would be what?
Don't cut the corners, Taylor.
Yeah, it's a way to motivate people that, that make Google kind of big. So they're not, they should give the change or change the motivation. Right. So it's, you've got to keep going link together.
I think that's extremely skill. It's not something present. She always wants to use any influence on you can change to
Except for over time.
constant
That's
motivation.
just going to be extrinsic, so
Gives
over time
one-
you
gives
build
that-
that, but
gives
results, immediate results, but they run
and better. Each kid's got its life there, get better at it and stuff. so.
over time. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's good.
Very good.
It'd be a better
Wonderful,
person,
relatively
teacher.
easy to do.
Or more like
Very good point.
the competency.
You're off.
Plus I think students also do a job.
I'll give you all about 2 more minutes.
Oh, in class, yeah.
It's a learning.
Okay. What are the pros?
Try to get at
We're
least
just
2 more
doing
down
the
there.
pros, right?
Yeah, just.
Yeah, you're just doing the pros.
It was, if you're intrinsically motivated, your students may also be, let's see the joy of your.
It works well for.
No feed off here.
Yeah, there we go.
Concrete. If you're interested there for a paycheck.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
All right, about 45 seconds to wrap up your last thought. right, now what we're gonna do, you all are gonna develop the cons for extrinsic motivation, and you all are gonna develop cons of intrinsic motivation. Okay?
That is nice. I think we have the heart.
I'll give you 3 minutes to do that.
Well, it's, most people always say you should. It's, yeah, it's absolutely right.
Very good, Katie.
Also,
Take vacation.
you have to wait to get really rewarded. You still got being intrinsically motivated. You have to get rewarded.
Intrinsic motivation will have the same things.
Well,
Oh, right.
That's inconsistent.
Maybe
Fair.
more.
You're,
You don't want to.
Or just put the opposite of that is to perceive that you're not.
You don't interested in the
I
paycheck.
can't think so.
Unreliable.
And sometimes there could be an event. Like, there could be an event that causes your intrinsic motivations.
Think about the use of extrinsic
You're all
motivation.
not gonna look at it, so.
Okay? So, not just
So maybe
for
it's
teachers.
dependent on
Okay?
situations.
It can be dependent on external
students
speech.
will motivate.
About that.
Students are only motivated to learn.
Sometimes they're intrinsically motivated.
Well,
There's
not exactly what we're looking to do.
So that the extrinsic motivation, a social activity needs to have an intrinsic.
Sorry to them all.
Yeah, motivations, it seems like they're engaging in activities that are just motivated by their social interests. So it can actually distract from your purpose if it's not reflected on.
Like emotions are motivated in the wrong way.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and a student seems like an opportunity to just collaborative activity where they're going to be able to make friends.
Okay, yeah.
So it
How we gonna?
It's a quick fix.
In about 45 seconds.
based on ourselves, so strong.
Yeah. You get your fun with it.
Yeah, I think it's not.
I agree.
Until you get in trouble.
It's not so much of a- well, tool.
30 seconds?
You can tap into, it's not a tool you apply the entire class.
That's a great. No. Maybe market necessarily.
All right. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is, you all are gonna debate for extrinsic motivation, and you're all gonna debate for intrinsic motivation. Okay? So, John, I want you to start for your team, and we'll start now.
We are.
Defend why you would use extrinsic motivation in the classroom.
It can be a quick fix to get students back interested in the material or to get them started.
Talk to them, you all are debating. Your teachers that use intrinsic, you use extrinsic, okay? All right?
But like I was saying, an extrinsic motivator, can be it's not necessarily a cure-all, but it can be a very useful tool to get students involved in a project or to motivate them to complete a project.
Brandon, what types of extrinsic motivation would you use?
Reward, well, some type of reward. I mean, you could also base it off grades and just, their extrinsic is the grade, but I think rewards it maybe, I don't know about candy, but like maybe, yeah, candy, ice cream, something like that. A little reward for the kids. That's not cool.
Floor's open for you all whenever you,
Yeah, come on,
Have a
debate
remote.
us.
Okay, this will be easy. So, intrinsic motivation actually engages the learner, whereas extrinsic motivations engage the learner in
that extrinsic, that external cause of their motivation, not the actual subject matter.
And to quote what you said, a quick fix, just like any other drug, is not going to completely, what? It's not going to motivate someone. It'll give them that high in the beginning, but they will fall away from it and continually want to get that high, but never actually get to it. So just like motivation, if they're not motivated to push forward, if they're always just waiting for that same quick fix, they're never going to get that quick fix they can again. If you continually give them candy, it's not going to have the same effect as you move forward.
To use a piece of vocabulary for what Josh is saying, if you want your students to be self-regulating, then if you're using, carrot and stick type motivation, then you're going to rely on them having carrots and sticks outside of the classroom as well to get them motivated.
Okay, but you're missing the point of the use of the motivator. It's not something that you want to use constantly in the classroom to get all the lessons done. You only want to use it once in a while to encourage students to finish up a difficult lesson that they're having a hard time getting done, that they're necessarily not motivated to do. And the thing with an extrinsic motivator is you can apply it to the entire classroom, whereas intrinsic, you may have part of the classroom that's wanting to get the material done and they're working hard, and then you've got 3 or 4 students over here that aren't. Or it may be the other way around. You have 3 or 4 students that are working hard on the project and everybody else isn't. And so it equals the playing field and gives the whole class something to push forward with.
To debate you on what you're saying, I wouldn't want my class to be a roller coaster ride of motivation. I would want my class to be, consistent. If I'm giving them motivation in terms of doggy treats of, whether they can turn around in a circle, then it's not really going to help them in the end. And so I think you're just picking them up and letting them fall back down, constantly, which I feel like is not a good motivator in the classroom. That's why I feel like intrinsic motivation is more trying to develop that in the classroom as opposed to feeding their external motivation.
What if the students have to have internal motivation to do it?
Students have all sorts of internal motivations, and internal motivations do all sorts of different things. The trick is being a good enough teacher to see how you can draw those out.
I agree. No, but students have particular internal motivators. It's spending the time to research your students to actually figure out what those internal motivators actually are, not just candy.
I agree.
But stop running a negative campaign.
Well, I'm just saying, this is debate, I'm debating.
Yes, but just because a student has an internal motivator doesn't necessarily mean it's toward that subject. You may be motivated to play Zelda. You may be motivated to play baseball or basketball, and not necessarily motivated to learn chemistry or physics or, 13th century French literature.
Well, in my opinion, I would use the Zelda analogy, the Zelda motivator to help the students learn in the classroom. Let's say I would use an example of, okay, you have these many rubies, you're trying to figure out how many you need to buy this.
They have maps too.
Yes. See, thank you.
Thank you,
Wonderful
Kate.
example. It's finding those ways of internally motivating students through what they enjoy,
Okay.
in my opinion. And
I
similar
absolutely
thing
love
for
this.
extrinsic.
Let me break in right here. Josh, would you defend solely using intrinsic motivation in the classroom? No extrinsic motivators at all?
Well, since I'm debating for intrinsic motivations, I would have to say that external motivators is not a sufficient means to
You're a debate team right now.
What?
Okay, intrinsic team. Everybody else agree? Katie, shaking her head. Why not? Why don't you agree?
I like John's point that if something gets difficult, you kind of need to push them a little with an extra thing to get them through.
Okay, so John, when would you want to use extrinsic motivation?
I would say only use it when it's a sufficiently large task that would justify the use of something external like this. You know, whether it was a major project, whether it was a semester-long research paper, something like that. You know, so it has to be a big enough chunk of the material to justify bringing something else in that's going to get off the subject matter.
Okay.
And, you know, and then again, only when the students are lagging behind, you know, what you would think is a timely schedule, you know, to give that extra push to get it performed, get the task performed.
Okay. All right. Very good. Let's take a look at this. Yes.
Are you not setting a bad precedent for every other task you have to do in that class by saying,
Are you?
this task is only big enough for you to be motivated for it?
Brandon, what do you think about that?
Well, you don't have to do it like that. I think it's all in the presentation. Like, you could do a big, especially like a science project, and say, okay, if everybody turns this in on time, maybe we'll go on a field trip to the science museum to learn more hands-on of the subject. So candy, you know, could be a simple one, but you know, something like that could also build their understanding, their deep conceptual knowledge of the subject, along with you know, giving them motivation to, you know, get this done on time. And and you don't have to say, well, this is big enough that you have to do it. You can just be like, okay, well, I've decided that if you guys do this, you get this. So relating it to the size of the project.
Yes, Mike.
I think this is a good point. It doesn't matter, you know, you're talking about extrinsic motivation as if it's something that you only apply to the classroom purposefully. But there's going to be a lot of incidental, as soon as you assess a student, some of those students are going to have extrinsic motivation about that assessment. And they're going to be automatically, you know, performance oriented. So I think it's going to be unavoidable that you're employing it. It's just not necessarily, you know, in the form of treats or praise, you know, directly from you. It's going to be part of the everyday assessment.
Okay. So I think the point that Team Intrinsic is getting at is that you don't want to use it all the time, because by default, they're going to only, like Josh said, it's a high. They want to continue to get that extrinsic reward. So you're never going to cultivate motivation to learn for the student. So perhaps we could think about only using extrinsic motivators as a last resort. So think about that while we look at this question. Which statement is more motivating to you if you were a student? You will complete this project and turn it in for 10% of your final grade. Or you can choose one of these 3 projects to complete to be evaluated for 10% of your final project grade. Take a second and think about that. In terms of a student position. Taylor, what do you think?
2B.
Why is that?
Well, it gives the student the choice to take ownership a little more over their project.
Okay, why is ownership good, Kevin?
Because it helps them to be self-regulated, so they kind of take charge of their learning,
Okay,
control their destiny.
okay. Brandon, do you like having an assignment that says you have to do this, this, and this? Or do you like to say, okay, well, here's what I can do, let me choose? Which one would be more motivating to you?
I like structure, but I guess if each of the 3 projects had, you know, certain, then I think 2B would probably be the best bet, I think.
Okay. All right, let's look at John. John, read John's statement for us.
I just cannot do well on problem tests. I don't understand why I do so well in history, but can never get better than a B on my math test.
Katie, what do you think John's focus of motivation is in this case?
Grades.
Okay. Brandon, tell me something else about John.
He apparently
From
doesn't
Go ahead.
do very good on math tests. He has difficulty either understanding or performing on tests in math.
Okay, so Josh, how might you help John perform more successfully if this was your math class?
I would try and, if he does well on another subject, maybe he does well on history, since he's made that clear, maybe try and relate a math concept back to something that he enjoys doing.
Okay. Kevin, why are real-world connections important to get students intrinsically motivated?
Because it helps them see the purpose of what they're learning.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, like, for example, they get to kind of see the process, why is it important, like science, to make sure that you have, do a science experiment correctly.
Okay, all right. So what we have been talking about today is a mastery-focused environment. That is what's going to get your students motivated, okay? Without the use of extrinsic rewards, except when do we want to use extrinsic rewards?
When
It's the last resort.
Last resort.
Let me see, I was on team intrinsic, I thought that.
Okay, very good. Okay, so we have 4 main components of a mastery-focused environment. Self-regulated students, which Kevin, you talked a little bit about that earlier. What does that mean?
Where the students are taking charge of their learning, the process, they have goals and they set and they achieve them.
Okay,
Plan to achieve the goals.
so goals, very good. Katie, as teachers, how can we help them with being self-regulated?
We can set up papers so that they can set the times where they want to have where they make mini goals and then set times where they want to have those done.
Okay, Matthew, what do you think? What about goals? How does that help our students?
What about goals?
Yes.
Well, it allows them something to work toward. They understand what what they actually need to do. They feel that they can make steps towards a specific task, and then recognize that when they're completing them. So.
Okay, Taylor, as a teacher, the second component is teacher characteristics. How can you, being the leader of your classroom, help your students become more intrinsically motivated?
Well, I think definitely setting a great example, being intrinsically motivated, and you can do that a lot by what you say and how you act. And setting a great example, and then telling them about, not necessarily telling about intrinsic motivation, but what motivates you personally, kind of sharing your passion for why you are intrinsically motivated.
Okay. John, if somebody expects the least from you, what are you going to give them?
Just a little bit less than least.
Exactly. So Brandon, as a teacher, what kind of outlook should we have for our students?
Definitely a positive outlook, they can do anything. Whatever I teach them, they're going to be capable of learning, so.
Okay, very good. So climate variables is our next component. What do you think that means, Josh?
essentially how the external influences are affecting the students.
Okay, affecting them where?
Maybe as far as motivation is concerned.
Okay, so you said they're affecting the students. So if they're your students, where are they affecting them directly? If we're talking about a mastery-focused environment in your
Classroom?
classroom, okay? So, Brandon, what can we do in our classrooms to help students within the classroom environment?
Well, you can create a constructive, student-based or student-oriented environment where they reflect off their peers, I guess, to solve problems or something.
Okay, Katie, going off what he said, why is peer work important?
Students learn from each other.
Okay, so if we're learning from each other, Matthew, what do we need to have established in our classroom?
A rapport, a certain sort of comfort level between students, allows them to work as groups, makes them, they aren't as performance oriented because they aren't really messing up in front of each other as much.
Okay, very good. So the last is instructional variables. Kevin, what do you think that means, instructional variables to affect motivation?
Maybe the different instructional strategies that you use in the classroom.
What do you mean?
Well, how you engage the students.
Okay, engagement, right? Who is excited if they're just sitting there like this, if you're just writing up on your board? What do you think your students are doing if you're doing that?
Actually, pictures, right?
Passing pictures, sleeping, so they're not paying attention, so they're not learning. They're not engaged in what they're doing. They have no motivation to pay attention to you. Okay, so let's look at Maria real quick. Katie, you want to read Maria for us?
Of course, I haven't done Mrs. Stinson's homework because she never checks to see if it's finished or if the answers are correct.
Okay, so I want you all to think about how Maria and Mrs. Stinson are not successful participants in a mastery-focused environment. John, you're laughing. Why are you laughing?
Well, we discussed this in class yesterday. You know, it's the expectations of the teacher that, you know, are lacking, and so the students picked up on that. And, you know, if it's not important enough to grade, why do I need to do it?
Exactly what he said. If it's not important enough for you to check, why are they going to do it? Why is it important to them? Create meaningful, purposeful activities for your students. Okay, now let's look at Tyler. I know I want to study forensic science in college, so I have to be able to balance chemical equations. Taylor, how does Tyler's future goal motivate him to succeed in chemistry?
Well, they're related.
How so? How are they related?
He realizes that in order to get to where he wants to be in college, he needs to take care of understanding certain content.
Okay, so he has to understand content. Adrian, why is that important? He has this goal. He wants to study forensic science. How does that motivate him specifically to do well in chemistry? In terms of how we set goals and why we set goals. Okay, Brandon, you want to help him out? How does his goal, his long-term goal, affect his performance now? And why is that important?
He knows what he needs to achieve, what he wants, and he's, you know, intrinsically motivated to be a forensic scientist. So therefore, in order to become that, he has to create these short-term goals that are steps to achieve that.
Yes.
It helps them focus on learning the process instead of just rewarding.
Okay, very good. So how can we as teachers in high-need schools where our students may or may not have developed long-term goals, help them develop those and show them why they are important? How can we do that?
By
Yes.
using the real world examples like you were stating earlier, students see, but not necessarily just what the end result is of a real world scenario, maybe show them how someone started somewhere and built upon their knowledge to get to where they are in the real world by using short-term goals. So like Tyler, for instance, because he wants to study forensic science, so he needs to know balancing chemical equations. Maybe we go back and show him, you know, someone who started off balancing chemical equations and then discovered something amazing in science, you know, go through it like that.
Okay, very good. Yes, Kevin?
Maybe have a guest speaker come in, maybe if the students are interested in a particular goal in life, you know, have someone from that field come in and give a discussion on it, how they use the materials that they're learning in class, the concepts.
Okay, very good. Yes, John, you have an idea?
Especially with some of the students that we're going to be working with in the high needs district. They have not been exposed to a lot of opportunities that are available out in the world. You know, they may not know, you know, what forensic science is other than CSIS. And so not just educating them about our particular subject matter, but about possible career opportunities. You know, we say that, well, that's the guidance counselor's job, but showing how our material falls into what their interests are and showing them what possible career paths that are available to them. You know, Tyler knew that he wanted to be a forensic scientist, but if a student has no idea what they want to do in life, then how can they connect our material to where, you know, why they need to learn it?
Very good. Do you have another idea?
Oh, well, I had, as an example, my teacher in high school was showing us the importance of decimals and decimal places. And she had said, as a real world example, in a hospital, a doctor
doctor put the decimal place in the wrong position and gave a patient too many ACTs of a certain substance, and they died because he messed up on his decimal place. She was showing us if you don't get it, that could be the end result. So that's how important it is. So that was extremely motivating to learn this.
Okay, so what is the big key from today? How do we help develop intrinsic motivation? What have we come back to time and time again?
Start by knowing the student.
Okay, very good. Katie,
Real world examples.
real world examples. Matthew,
Goals.
goals. Okay, so all of these are very important, and it starts with you. Because if you don't have expectations for yourself, your students, and your classrooms, and you aren't motivated, then they're never going to be. Okay? That's it.